So guys, you know what the situation is with this Steelers linebacker room heading into 2026. We got a former All-Pro who's had 2 disappointing years since he got here, and we got a former high draft pick who's flashed talent but never really looked like a full-time starter. And that's been the biggest question mark on this whole defense going into a new season. But something came out this week from someone close to this coaching staff, a comment about exactly how this second level of the defense gets fixed, and it's got me a lot more optimistic than I expected to be. So I'm going to break down what's actually behind this and why I think it changes the outlook on this defense. And stick around because at the end, I've got some fresh ESPN rankings on 2 of our other guys that you're going to want to hear about too. What's up, Steelers fans? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
What's up, Steelers fans? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. So let's get into it, because this is the kind of update that actually excites me. Ryan Clark was talking about a conversation he had with Joe Woods Jr., who's our new defensive backs coach, and what came out of that was basically confirmation that the coaching staff already knows exactly where the issue is on this defense. It's not the defensive line. That group is stacked and everybody knows it. It's not really the secondary either. I mean, you could argue for another piece at safety, but overall, that room is in good shape. The one spot with real question marks is that linebacker room, and honestly, I think most of us have known that for a while now. Let's start with Patrick Queen, because I think he's the guy this whole thing hinges on. This is a guy who was an All-Pro, a legit All-Pro before he ever got to Pittsburgh. And since he's been here, it's been 2 seasons that I'd call disappointing, if I'm being honest. There was clearly a disconnect between him and the scheme, and if you go back and watch some of his post-game interviews last year, you could hear the frustration in his voice. He wasn't playing loose, he wasn't playing fast, and a guy with his kind of talent, that tells you something's off, and it's usually not about talent, it's about fit. And then you got Payton Wilson, who honestly might even have more raw physical ability than Queen. This was a high pick, a guy the organization had real expectations for, and he just hasn't been able to put it together consistently yet. Flashes here and there, sure, but not the full-time, every-down production you want to see from a player with his tools. And look, that's on nobody in particular. That's just kind of been the story of this linebacker room under the old scheme.
Now here's why I'm actually optimistic, and this is the part that got me fired up. Patrick Graham is the new defensive coordinator, and this guy has a track record of getting the best out of players who didn't look right in previous systems. I mean, think about it, guys. We've watched this happen before with guys who left Pittsburgh and suddenly looked like completely different players somewhere else. You look at what happened once certain linebackers got out of this building and into a scheme that actually played to their strengths, and it's not a coincidence anymore at this point, it's a pattern. So when I hear that Graham has already had real conversations about fixing the second level of this defense, that tells me he's not just aware of the problem, he's already got a plan. And I think that plan starts with using Queen and Wilson the right way, instead of asking them to do things that don't fit their skill set. Because if you actually get Queen back playing downhill and fast the way he did before he got here, and you get Wilson locked in as a full-time starter who's trusted to just go play instead of thinking too much out there, man, that's a completely different linebacker room. That's the difference between a defense that's good and a defense that's genuinely elite. And I know that sounds like a big jump, but I really think the ceiling is there if the scheme fits. Now, here's the thing that's got me even more locked in on this defense right now, because it's not just about the linebackers. It's about the versatility this coaching staff is building across the back end, too. And that brings me to a name a lot of you probably don't know yet, Deshawn Jameson. This guy has quietly been one of the more talked about names in this offseason program. And it's not because he's some big name free agent or a high draft pick, it's because of what he's actually showing on the field right now during OTAs and minicamp.
What stands out to me about Jameson is the versatility, honestly. He came into the league as an outside corner. That was his whole background at the college level and even his limited time with Carolina before he got here. But last year, the Steelers started using him almost exclusively in the slot. And from what's being said, he's taken to it well. And that matters because we already know how much this coaching staff values guys who can do more than one thing. You look at how this front office has drafted the last couple years, they keep picking up players who can play multiple spots and also contribute on special teams. And Jameson checks every one of those boxes. He's played gunner, he's played kick returner, he's played punt returner, and now he's showing he can hold up in the slot too. And I think that matters even more when you connect it back to what we just talked about with the linebackers, because if Graham is bringing in a scheme that's going to ask defensive backs to do more, to be more multiple, to blitz more, to disguise more, then having pieces like Jameson who can slide around and play different spots without the defense losing anything, that's exactly the kind of depth you want. It's not just one position group getting fixed in isolation. It feels like this whole defense is being built with more flexibility across the board, and that's a good sign going into a new scheme. There's also been chatter that if Jameson keeps performing the way he has, it could actually push a veteran off this roster, or at least open up the door for the team to move on from a corner who struggled down the stretch last season, especially in that playoff game. And listen, I'm not saying that's a done deal, but when your depth guys are playing well enough that the team feels comfortable making moves at other spots, that's exactly the kind of problem you want to have. That's organizational depth actually paying off instead of just being a nice thing to talk about in June.
So now, remember at the start of this video, I mentioned I had some ESPN news for you guys? Well, here it is. And honestly, it ties right back into everything we just talked about. ESPN just dropped their annual rankings for cornerbacks and edge rushers heading into this season, and two of our guys got, in my opinion, disrespected on these lists. Let's start with Joey Porter Jr., because this one honestly bothers me a little. ESPN's cornerback list did not include him in the top 10, not top 5, not top 10, nowhere on the actual list, just an honorable mention. And when you look at the numbers, guys, that's just not right. This is a guy who hasn't allowed a touchdown in 2 straight seasons, 2 full seasons without giving one up. He was top 3 in the league in passer rating allowed last year, top 3 in forced incompletions, and his numbers in coverage were better than basically every single guy that did make that top 10 list. So for me, that's not just a snub, that's a real miss by the people voting on this thing. And then you got TJ Watt, who ESPN ranked as the 7th best edge rusher in the league this year. Now look, I get it. He had a down year statistically, only 7 sacks, and he missed time with that lung injury. But 7th? After being ranked 2nd the last 2 years in a row? That's a big fall for a guy who's still getting double-teamed on basically every snap and still one of the most respected players at his position around the league. But here's where I bring it all back together, because I actually think both of these situations connect to everything we just talked about with Graham coming in. If this new scheme is going to move guys around more, blitz more, disguise more, and actually get more out of players who were miscast in previous systems, then I don't think Porter or Watt are staying underrated for long. I think both of these guys are about to have the kind of seasons that make these rankings look silly by the time we get to next year. So that's where I'm at with this defense right now, guys. New coordinator, a linebacker room that finally might have direction, a versatile piece quietly climbing the depth chart in the secondary, and 2 stars who I think are about to remind the whole league why they're special. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Are you buying into this defense the way I am? And where do you think Joey Porter Jr. and TJ Watt should actually be ranked? Drop your thoughts below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.